I wanted to come here and do a quick episode on a Saturday, talk about an Orlando Magic win over the Charlotte Hornets, Paolo Banchero making another star turn, but why can't things be simple? More injuries for the Orlando Magic that we got to dive all the way into. Let's get to it. It's time for Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is March 4th, 2023. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the expert insight editor over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Of course, follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, a pair of injuries make for an unhappy Friday despite a really nice win over the Charlotte Hornets. We'll get into that game, but talk about the injuries facing Jonathan Isaac and, yes, Franz Wagner as well, as we try to wrap our heads around what happened on Friday night. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day, no matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload. We truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Remember, there's a great Locked On podcast covering every single team in the NBA. Just search for Locked On and the team you're looking for, the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. I'd love to talk first about the Orlando Magic's win over the Charlotte Hornets, but there's no getting around the big news of the day that came down Friday. At around 3:30, 4 o'clock, Woj was the first one that I saw reporting it, but the Orlando Magic shortly announced afterward, Jonathan Isaac will not play the rest of the season. He has undergone surgery to repair a torn left adductor muscle that is kind of related to your hamstring. It is a related injury to the surgery that he had back in last March. But obviously, honestly, when the news came down, it was just a huge crushing blow, just personally. There's a lot happening here with Jonathan Isaac's injury, but the first thing is, the dude worked so hard, through so much adversity to get back from the torn ACL. The Magic were abundantly cautious to try and make sure there weren't any more setbacks. There was the hamstring injury last March that only further kind of upped the caution and tried to make sure everything was stable. And man, for this to happen after he was playing so well, after it felt like he was getting ready to ramp up his minutes, it's heartbreaking. And I'm sure the Magic are going to reevaluate all of their processes and the decisions they made. I am sure that there are a lot of questions that will still need to be answered and still need to be sorted through in order to figure out Isaac's future. And we'll talk a little bit about that, but I just don't think today is that day. This is just personally heartbreaking and frustrating. As a fan, as someone who's been around Isaac as a person, that dude wants nothing more than to play basketball. And I think he could tell that. He was excited to be back on the floor. He was excited to help his teammates. He's been nothing but a good teammate over the course of all of this. Everybody's been cheering for him to make his return and to be the player that we all thought he could be before his initial injury back, 3 years ago now. And this is just incredibly frustrating. And I know that Isaac's the kind of person that's going to take it in stride and he's not going to be too down on himself for this. At least I don't think he will. He's got to keep the faith. That is the strongest part of him, is that he will keep the faith on this. And then he will try and make a comeback. And as Jeff Weltman said in his press release from the Magic are going to be right there with him, for the time being. It obviously sucks. I told a lot of people before the season that getting Isaac back was a bonus. Anything you can get from him should be considered a bonus, just because it's true. Right now, you can't rely on him to be healthy, and that is really vital. That is a really vital thing, just to be available. We'll get to Franz Wagner here in a second, but I don't think any of us doubt Franz Wagner is going to be out very long if he even misses time to begin with, because that dude just plays. He plays through everything. It's not that Isaac isn't trying to do that, But these are serious injuries, and his body just does not seem willing to cooperate. Whether it was the ankle injury his rookie year, whether it was the knee injury, the random knee injury that occurred in his third year, to ACL when we got into the bubble, to just the long recovery to get back to now, it's been a frustrating road for a player who is supremely talented. I don't think today is the day to make decisions. But this kind of injury and the way that this all comes down does, I think, put a lot of questions as to Isaac's future. And whether Isaac even has a future with this team, to some extent. I think that this absolutely is a reflection point, an inflection point. Look, the last 2 years of Isaac's contract are non-guaranteed. He is only guaranteed about $7.5 million. Next year, his contract in 2024 is fully non-guaranteed. The Magic set this up to protect themselves in case this happened. His contract guarantees were pegged to both date and to games played. And Isaac's obviously not hitting those marks right now. It is anticipated that Isaac will be ready for training camp at the very least. Will have some summer runway to get better and get himself back into shape. So if the Magic, I would expect that the Magic will wait him out one more year. But boy, does that put a lot of pressure on a guy who has just not played a lot of games. I really hate to reduce people down to contracts, but if the Magic need the money to sign someone this offseason, it would not surprise me if the Magic do separate from Isaac. And that's unfortunately what this injury kind of foretells. The Magic have done everything they can. They have been supportive, and I think they will continue to be supportive. But we've reached the end of the road here, or we're getting closer to the end of the road with Isaac. The Magic have given him all the runway, all the freedom, all the opportunity to get back, and obviously some of that is out of Isaac's control. He's got to be healthy to play. But that only leads to more questions. That only leads to more issues and more things to look forward to. And eventually this team does have to move forward. That is a $17 million contract that's sitting on their books, and right now that doesn't matter. But in a couple years it will. Because in a couple years Cole Anthony needs to get paid. In a couple years Jalen Suggs needs to get paid. Franz Wagner needs to get paid. Paolo Banchero needs to get paid. There is no Jonathan Isaac after this contract expires. Not at this amount. And it's going to be very, very tough to justify giving up the roster spot and continuing to wait things out, even with how talented and good Isaac is. Again, this is a part of the conversation that we have to have. With another major injury, another surgery, another comeback cut short, we do have to start asking questions about where does Isaac fit in the future, and at what point does this team pull the plug? We will have that discussion, I think, throughout the offseason, and especially heading into free agency, because that is a major chip the Magic could play. The Magic could squeeze out another $9 million of cap room, and that puts them over 30 if you're going to go after a major free agent. That's the reality of this business and the reality of this game. But honestly, as much as we do have, our mind starts to wander there, I just want to feel for the kid. He's not a kid anymore, but I have to feel for Isaac. And I know so many Magic fans are just spiritually crushed by this, because we all see the talent Isaac has and how good he is with teammates and even in the community. And it just does not seem fair that things just never add up for him. That everything has seemingly worked against him. Isaac's done for the year, though, and the Magic will, as always, have to move forward. Friday's game, though, saw another injury, another key injury, and it overshadowed what was actually a pretty decent game from Orlando, or maybe concerning game, I don't know. But we'll talk about that coming up here in just a moment. But first, a quick word from our friends at not BetterHelp. I have the wrong thing up. That's later. But first, a quick word from our friends at FanDuel. There we go. Got the wrong ad up. You saw what it was. We are past the midway point of the NBA season, heading to the final quarter of the year, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to points scored and threes drained. There are a couple of those people trying to sneak in some Rookie of the Year candidates, trying to claim that, Paolo Banchero isn't Rookie of the Year. I see you, Kings. And Keegan Murray's had a great year, but come on, guys. You're really going to compare Keegan Murray, who's had a very good year, to Paolo Banchero and the double teams he's seeing? I think you answered your own question there. The odds are very good on Paolo Banchero to win Rookie of the Year, so that's easy money. Not a lot of money, but easy money. So you can bet on that, plus other great props and offers at FanDuel. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. Don't miss a chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Like I said, there were two injuries that happened Friday. First was Jonathan Isaac. Second, in the second quarter of the Orlando Magic's win over the Charlotte Hornets, 117-106, Franz Wagner appeared to trip over the basketball trying to go after a loose ball underneath his basket, and he fell hard and appeared to roll his ankle. He's officially out with a sprained left ankle. He did get up, he did limp off the floor and limp into the locker room. He did not return for the second half of the game. Knowing Franz, x-rays were negative, so that's good. That's good news as well. Knowing Franz, as long as it's not a high ankle sprain, I don't think it was. It looked like a pretty, relatively normal injury. Knowing Franz, he's not going to miss much time. So the general vibe that Jamal Mosley gave is that Franz will be fine. That it's not anything super serious. Sprained ankles happen. If he misses a game, he'll miss a game. And so obviously that was the huge story of this game and a huge story of Friday night. The Magic were just dealing with injuries left and right, everywhere, every which way. They, had to find their way through it. And luckily they have a guy like Paolo Banchero because, what sucks about the injuries is that it hid what turned out to be a pretty decent game from the Orlando Magic. Yes, there are some things to be a little bit worried about and concerned about, but the Magic overall played a fantastic game. Paolo Banchero, stepping up in Franz Wagner's absence, scored 16 of his 31 points in the third quarter, and he was all in his bag. He made 2 3-pointers for the first time since late January in a game. He was hitting his step backs, he was hitting his fadeaways, he was getting to the basket, didn't get to the foul line. That was the one thing he didn't do well, but had a couple and ones, was just bulldozing his way through Charlotte's defense. And once he kind of locked in, once he kind of knew, hey, I've got to step up and carry this team, he did that. The Magic built as much as a 24-point lead in that third quarter, largely on Paolo's back. And the Magic just understood, feed him the rock, give him the ball, get out of his way. Paolo Banchero is going to carry us to victory. And that's honestly exactly what Paolo Banchero did. It was an exciting, a thrilling game from him. And obviously he was such a huge presence for the team. The rest of the game, though, it really had its rocky moments. Look, Cole Anthony still had 16 points, finished, has done a lot of things that we've grown accustomed to him doing over the last few weeks, really over the last month and a half or so. Jalen Suggs stepped in, played Franz Wagner's minutes in the third quarter in the starting lineup. He finished with 15 points, had a really solid game, as usual pest that he is on defense, 5 for 9 shooting. But the real story in this game was, despite the Magic shooting so well, 53.5% from the floor, 38.5%, 10 for 26 from beyond the arc, only 15 for 19 from the foul line, despite all that, Orlando never kind of got the kill down. And I think this is the big thing for the Magic. It's just kind of keeping the same intensity, especially when playing with the lead. And this is a team that hasn't played with the lead a lot. This is, the Magic's first double-digit victory in a little while. The Magic had 20 turnovers that turned into 27 Charlotte points. Kelly Oubre scored 22 points, hit 4 of 8 3-pointers. He had 4 of Charlotte's 9 3-point makes. 4 for 9. He had 29 points. Terry Rozier had 22 points on 4 for 8 3-point shooting. So 8 of Charlotte's 9 3-point makes came from 2 players, and they really carried Charlotte back into this game. Charlotte got to within 7. And so Orlando, which had played a pretty sloppy game for most of the outing, until Paolo Banchero kind of put his foot down. The bench did a good job building a lead in the second quarter. Paolo put his foot down, gave Orlando a sizable advantage in the third. The Magic kind of ran away, but never really put the game away. Charlotte got to within 7, and that's when Orlando had to close things out. Markelle Fultz, who struggled for most of the game, 9 points, 5 turnovers, 4 for 8 shooting, made some big shots down the stretch to put the Magic ahead. Gary Harris hit a wild flip shot to put the Magic kind of firmly and comfortably ahead too. This was a game where the Magic were far from perfect. They were downright sloppy at times. It was not a pretty game for Orlando. And they still found their way. They still did enough to win. And again, credit goes to Paolo Banchero. 31 points is really strong game. Wendell Carter had 12 points, 9 rebounds. You get 9 each from, Franz had 9 before he left the game, 9 each from Fultz and Harris. Orlando just got a big boost from its bench like it always does. 13 points for Mo Wagner as well in this one. He had a really strong showing in his short time. Just really imbalanced scoring for Orlando. And that, again, some of it is they gave the ball to Paolo a lot. He shot 13 for 26. They trusted him to kind of carry the team. His shot selection is still looking to get better, but when he got on his tear in the third quarter, but otherwise he was just kind of solid drumbeat, and Orlando needed somebody else to kind of get themselves going. And look, Charlotte just doesn't have the horses to keep up with that. Charlotte turned the ball over themselves 21 times, so it's not like Orlando was poor. Their defense was really good. They made key stops. They were decent in transition, but it was just a really sloppy game for Orlando. And it's not it's a game where you won and the Magic won comfortably because the moments when they were locked in, when they were focused, Charlotte couldn't beat them. Charlotte really couldn't do much with them. But there are too many moments where Orlando just, I don't want to say went through the motions because that's not accurate. There are too many moments where Orlando just didn't play under control, didn't play with poise. And look, Markelle had 5 turnovers. Paolo had 3. You expect turnovers from Paolo at this point, still. Franz had 2. Wendell had 2. Cole had 2. Jalen had 3. There are just too many of these moments where the Magic were just too loose with the ball. Where they played them like they were the Hornets. And I said it early in the game when Charlotte still had a little bit of a lead. The only thing that's going to keep Charlotte in this game is turnovers. The Magic are a better team. They are going to dominate this game, but turnovers remained a huge issue for the Orlando Magic. It's really just that simple. Again, most nights the Magic against most opponents. Milwaukee's different. Boston's different. We'll see Milwaukee again on Tuesday. Some of these opponents are different, but the Magic just can't beat themselves. Most nights against most opponents, the Magic just have to avoid beating themselves, and they will have a chance to win. And again, Orlando kind of beat themselves a little bit here to let Charlotte hang around longer than they should, or make the game more interesting than they should. But look, the Magic had 64 points in the paint, beat Charlotte 64-52 in the paint, 20 second chance points, still 14 fast break points, even though Charlotte had 20. Orlando did plenty to win this game and did plenty to keep Charlotte at distance, give them some of that margin for error, to make mistakes. They made some mistakes, but the Magic ultimately prevailed 117-106. As you can tell, I'm probably a little low energy. We're on a Saturday, so that's going to conclude today's episode of Locked On Magic. You can, of course, find me on Twitter at @PhilipRR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey. All of the places to download podcasts to your podcast and listen device. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can follow us there on Twitter at @OMagicDaily. Now that you're done listening to us, be sure to check out the Locked On NBA podcast, especially the Game to Game podcast every Monday through Friday. Get all the latest scores and analysis from all the local experts. It's like watching every game around the league with someone who knows their team best. That's the power of the Locked On Podcast Network. Check it out today, Game to Game NBA on the Locked On NBA podcast feed on Odyssey, YouTube, and wherever you download podcasts. That's going to do it for me, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. We'll see you again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.